alternative talk radio. Get ready, America, for Deadline Live with your host, Jack Blood. Deadline Live is the daily wrap-up for those too busy in the daily grind to discern and dissect the news. While the so-called mainstream media buries the truth, Jack Blood uncovers it, exposing the lies that our trusted government officials do not want us to know. And now, please welcome Jack Blood.
We are locked and loaded for the Propaganda War, second hour of Deadline Live, coming your way the 7th day of September 2010. I'm Jack Blood, your narrator, your radio gun, reporting for the next hour. We're on the air Monday through Friday, 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock p.m. Central Time. Our archives and everything we do is free at deadlinelive.info. We ask that you support our sponsors. We've got some great ones for you. Interfood, of course, My Life's Blood. Folks really need to watch what you put in your body. Garbage in, garbage out. And if you don't have time to figure it all out, Interfood does it for you with all their great ingredients like all the superfood. It's going to be really hard to shop for and buy and prepare. They've done it all. Spirulina, chlorella, dulse, kelp, barley grass, wheatgrass, alfalfa leaf, lemon peel, just all these great ingredients you get in your body, 50 cents a day. Go check out Interfood.com. They're linked at deadlinelive.info. And Wholesale Direct Metals. I'm looking at the gold today. It's just about to go through the ceiling. This, of course, due to the economic catastrophe happening all around us. It just forces gold up more. It is the safest investment today, bar none. Where do you get it from? WholesaleDirectMetals.com. Our good friends, 800-806-6936. We put our investigative team onto these guys. We vetted them before we would do business with them and then recommend that you do business with them. And they have one of the best reputations, if not the best reputation in the precious metals business. You get your gold almost immediately. They are very easy to deal with, and we highly recommend that, folks, you get something into precious metals. You're missing out. You can go to deadlinelive.info and watch it going up. I think it's going to hit a new milestone here about any second. Please do your business with WholesaleDirectMetals.com, and it does help our radio broadcast. Here we are leading up into the 9th anniversary of 9/11, and all this week we've got some of the top truthers out there. Not that we're putting them in a hierarchical order, but these are the people that really had the most to lose. Some of them, government officials who were brave enough to come out and talk about what did happen that day on 9/11. Well, one of those people is Dr. Bob Bowman, Lieutenant Colonel Bob Bowman. He is the former director of the Advanced Space Programs Development for the U.S. Air Force in the Ford and Carter administrations, a former United States Air Force lieutenant colonel with 101 combat missions. He holds a Ph.D. in Aeronautics, Nuclear Engineering from Caltech. And he joins us now on his Patriots tour somewhere on the West Coast. Dr. Bowman, always great to have you with us.
Thanks very much, Jack. Good to be back on.
It's been a long 9 years, hasn't it, Bob? I think I'd like to start with you on this. When did you become aware that the 9/11 story just wasn't adding up, and how is it that you decided to go put your name behind the effort of 9/11 Truth?
Well, I figured that the official story was not true. On the morning of 9/11, when I watched what was happening, and all I kept saying was, where are the interceptors? And then when the first tower fell, I just said, that can't happen. There's something going on here. And then the second tower fell, and it just got worse and worse. By the next day, with pictures and names of all the supposed hijackers and, passports floating to the street below where they could be found. The whole thing was fishy, and I knew we were being lied to from day one. I started mentioning this in my newsletters and speaking out a little about it, and folks heard about me in Canada and asked me to be one of the main speakers at a 9/11 symposium in Toronto. and I did, both mainly on the timeline of the interceptors and the FAA and all the rest of that, NORAD, and calculated, who was to blame in this thing, and it was not the pilots. It was the fact that the word never got to the pilots in time for them to get there. And because people before that have been saying, why did the pilots fly so slow? How come they didn't get there on time? Well, that wasn't the case at all. And they could have gotten there if they'd been notified, and they could have gotten there with lots of time to spare. If just normal procedures had been followed on the morning of 9/11, if our government had done absolutely nothing, just let normal procedures...
Get out of the way, yeah.
Yeah. The Twin Towers would still be standing and thousands of dead Americans would still be alive. And, of course, we would not have these two corporate wars of aggression. 5,500 of our soldiers would still be alive, and hundreds of thousands of innocent Iraqi and Afghan civilians would still be alive. So, there's something fishy here. And as I said in Toronto all those years ago, this is not incompetence. It is treason.
Exactly, and we did a conference, Treason in America, and I was making just that case, but not the pilots, as you mentioned, not the people that are, working within this pyramidical, compartmentalized structure, which has been admitted over and over again. I listened to you talk about, why the planes weren't scrambled, and minimally why they couldn't intercept the final planes that went down in Shanksville, which we think they might have intercepted and not told us about, and certainly the one that allegedly hit the Pentagon. We're still working on that one. Two of the things that happened, and we later, got some of this, we heard some of the tapes, thanks to Vanity Fair and others, were that they were confused about the drills. The people in the know at the time didn't know if this was happening or not happening, if this was, a war game or if this was really happening, which I thought was most likely the cover. But the other thing we heard was that the standing operating procedure, and I'm sure you could speak to this, was that if America becomes, gets under attack, that the planes scramble out to the ocean somewhere and wait for the Russians to get us. I think they tried a couple of those on us, Bob, and neither one of those add up to me. If you're under attack and the transponders are turned off and there are certain major targets, you're talking about the Pentagon, the most guarded building in the world, you do something about it. And the fact that they didn't, I thought, was just a glaring and very obvious part of this story that really, got people like yourself and myself up to say, we're not buying it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that the standing operating procedure? Do you buy into they all went out to the ocean to wait for the Russians to attack us?
No, of course not. Not at all. And that was never the procedure. And the procedure until a few weeks before 9/11 was if an aircrafter lost voice contact or it lost its transponder or it went significantly off course. Any of the three, you intercepted it, period. There was no question. Yeah. And on that morning, of course, all three of those things happened to four different airliners. So why wasn't the order issued immediately to have them intercepted? Now, you have to understand, intercepting does not necessarily mean shooting down. There is
and we covered. We got to go to break here, but let me just throw this in. We covered. I spoke in the first hour about Norman Mineta's testimony that Dick Cheney, didn't want anything done. So again, we have a guilty culprit here. If he was ever made to testify, called and really put under oath, we'd have him, I think. They're going after Roger Clemens for baseball right now, and they should be going after this guy. Bob Bowman with us, Lieutenant Colonel Bob Bowman. He'll be back with us right after this break. Stay tuned. Deadline Live. Dr. Bob Bowman is with us, though he helped develop, worked with Star Wars for 2 presidents. He ultimately came out against it during the Reagan administration, calling it the ultimate military lunacy, easily overwhelmed and vulnerable. Bob Bowman founded the Institute for Space and Security Studies in its publication Space and Security News. But his latest gig is Patriots.us. Is it? I'm just doing it off the top of my head, Bob. Is it The Patriots or Patriots.us?
ThePatriots.us. If you leave the THE off, you're liable to get the football team.
Which is good. My favorite team.
Yeah.
I want to talk more about that before you go, but because we're here talking about the anniversary of 9/11, there's so much I want to ask you. We're also going to go into Building What, which is a great new campaign. But let's kind of stay in gear here because, you having your extensive Air Force background, understanding that the planes should have been intercepted, that drills replicating the exact same motions of the so-called hijackers couldn't have been planned by Osama bin Laden. And then also, Bob, we've talked about this before when I've had you on, the extensive maneuvers that some of these so-called pilots, these so-called hijackers, of which there seems to be no real evidence they were even on the planes, if you ask me, these maneuvers were nearly impossible. I had an opportunity, and I hope someone could help me find this audio because I want to put it on this week, to interview General Tony McPeak, who was head of the first Gulf War, Joint Chiefs of Staffs, ran the entire air campaign there. And before he knew what I was asking him, Bob, I was asking him about those maneuvers and remote control airplanes, and he seemed a little skeptical. He didn't really seem too clear on how those maneuvers were done, especially when you look at the Pentagon maneuver, which took the plane down and maybe a few feet off the ground for a while before it crashed in, allegedly, to the Pentagon. I mean, if you're a pilot, and we are going to have the pilots for 9/11 Truth up this week as well, but if you're a pilot, you look at this and you think, I couldn't have done that. I don't know anyone else who could have done that. How did Hani Hanjour on Flight 77 accomplish it?
Yeah, well, and, a lot of it has to do with pilot skill and whatnot, but there's also a lot that has to do with simply the capabilities of the aircraft. There's a couple of things. One is that tight spiraling turn, descending turn that supposedly was done by the airliner is probably outside the limits of the software control system because they simply don't want airliners pulling that many Gs because it would injure the passengers and endanger the aircraft, like wings falling off and all that. So the control system has limits, and they don't let the pilot perform certain maneuvers. And I think the maneuvers that plane supposedly did are beyond those of an airliner. In addition, the plane that supposedly hit the Pentagon had engine pods slung under the wings, and there is no way that the plane could have gotten as low as it was supposed to get to hit the Pentagon on the first floor without the engine nacelles digging into the grass. But there's absolutely no indication that happened. So there are enormous questions about what happened at the Pentagon.
Well, we're not supposed to worry about those questions, are we, Bob? We're the American people, just go along with what they tell us and everything will be fine. Well, here we are 9 years and everything hasn't been fine. The Afghan war is now just...
And we're not supposed to worry about the questions about Building 7 either.
Building what? Well, I mean, here we are going on the 9th anniversary. The Afghan war has just surpassed the Vietnam War that you fought in, Bob, and as the longest war in American history. We pulled out. Okay, the war is over in Iraq. I got to get your opinion on that because you've been talking out against the war since the 90s, long before 9/11, the war in Iraq and the oppression there. And today 2 soldiers lost their lives fighting in Iraq where the war is supposed to be over. So let me get your response to that. First off, this is because these are the fruits of 9/11. We've lost our liberties. It's cost us a lot of money. We've got the longest-running war in history that we seem to be losing, technically, in Afghanistan to the Taliban, which we did fly out before we invaded. And then Iraq, the war is over. If you want to handle any of that, I'd love to hear your 2 cents on it.
Well, the war in Iraq was essentially over long ago. What we've had here has been an occupation. And, of course, I say you can't win occupation. And an occupation involves loss of life, involves combat. Yeah, you can call it a war, you cannot call it a war. But the fact is, little changed at the end of August. We still have 50,000 troops there, and we have more mercenaries than that in Iraq. So we've still got a formidable force there to protect not only the largest embassy in mankind's history, but the oil fields and all the rest of it.
Mission accomplished. Well, I mean, you're right. Mission was accomplished. The war is over. We did go in. We did take over Baghdad. And the occupation hasn't ended. They've actually, now they call it Operation New Dawn, which is, I don't know, maybe that will last 50 or 60 years. Lieutenant Colonel Bob Bowman with us, thepatriots.us. We'll talk about that and his activism when we come back, as well as other issues pertaining to 9/11. Stay with us. Deadline Live, I'm Jack Blood, your radio gun, rentsradio.com.
I lost my son,
My nephew,
my uncle,
my son.
on September 11th, 2001.
Most people don't know that a third tower fell on September 11th.
World Trade Center 7, a 47-story skyscraper, was not hit by a plane.
Although the official explanation is that fire brought down Building 7
Over 1,200 architects and engineers have looked into the evidence.
and believe there is more to the story.
Bring justice to my son.
My uncle,
My nephew,
My son.
and thousands of others who died on September 11th.
Go to buildingwhat.org.
Yeah, well, I guess we say that every 4 to 8 years. Bob Bowman is with us, Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Bob Bowman. Almost unseated the incumbent. He was Tea Party before Tea Parties were cool. Oh, Bob, man, you almost had that one back as 2004, right? No, it can't have been that long.
2000.
That you ran for Congress and almost won?
Yeah, I won my primary by 10 points over a middle-of-the-road mainstream Democrat named Jack Kennedy, and then I went up against the 7-term incumbent Republican congressman, and although he outspent me 10-1, exit polls had me 12 points winning the election, and the touchscreen voting machines turned it around.
That was 6 years ago now, really?
Yeah.
Was it in 06 that you ran?
4 years ago.
You know, it seems like yesterday, because the point about all of that is that, you know, here's politics. For anybody who's just tuning in and maybe, you know, they're not familiar with our show, here's politics. Bob won the Democrat primary. He was running against the incumbent Republican in the Space District in Florida, of which he has obvious credentials that, you know, would obviously propel him. And the Democratic Party, who at that time was trying to recapture the House, and they have, let's not let our listeners forget, they've had that now for 4 years, not just the 2 that Obama has been in. didn't support you. They didn't come to your aid at all. They didn't help pitch in with any of the money, and you almost won anyway. They would have had another seat, so they didn't want a Democrat seat with Bob Bowman in it for, I guess, since people have been listening to this show now for 35 minutes, since you've been on for obvious reasons. But it shows really what an illusion this whole Democrat-Republican thing is, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And, of course, the head of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee at the time was no other than Israeli-American Rahm Emanuel. And he made sure that none of us who were combat veterans running against the war, and there were dozens of us around the country, he made sure none of us got a penny from the Democratic Party at any level.
And Jim Webb won anyway. I think was one example of that. But remember what they did to Max Cleland back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
Again, another guy who had questions about the war and questions about 9/11. Quadruple amputee, and they tried to say that he was working with Al Qaeda. I mean, that's how desperate they were. But it wasn't the Bush administration that hit you in your campaign. It was a familiar face here, Rambo Emanuel, who's now chief of staff with the Obama administration.
Right.
And yet you have been pretty open-minded, I have to say. I think gently nudging the Obama administration, giving them constructive criticism. I think you could have been a little more harsh, Bob, but that's the kind of guy you are. And still, any response from any of that? The guy who was once head of Star Wars under two presidents, do they ever get back to you for any of the wonderful letters that you write the president?
No, not a one. But, the situation is that, we only have one president. And so while we can try and educate people that the political party doesn't matter, that they're both controlled at the highest level by the billionaires, the multinational corporations, the bankers, that whoever is the president, you've got to work on them to see if you can get them to turn around. Now, I even worked on H.W. Bush. I didn't really bother with George W. Bush because he was just a puppet of Dick Cheney, and Dick Cheney was so far gone, so evil in my mind that, there was no way to get them to convert and do the right thing. But I worked on George H.W. Bush. I thought he might have some goodness in him somewhere, even though he was head of the CIA and one of the, big wigs in the Trilateral Commission and all of that. But with Obama, I still think deep down there's a community organizer guy that would like to do something good for the American people, and I'm reaching out to that at the same time that I'm telling folks that we're looking into whether the perpetuation of Bush's war crimes warrants that Obama and his people be indicted for war crimes as well.
Well, and Woodward just came out with this book called Obama's Wars, and I'm hearing more and more pundits start to now hand these wars off like a baton at an Olympic event to cousin Barry Obama, who, by the way, is, if I didn't tell you this already, cousins with Dick Cheney. They've admitted that, and they kind of laugh about it. You look at the transition between the two administrations, and you see all these people. Obviously, you've got Ben Bernanke as head of the Federal Reserve. You got Jim Jones, and then of course you got Robert Gates, who's a holdover back from the Iran-Contra days, as the Secretary of War. Oh, sorry, Secretary of Defense. They call him now.
Right.
Yeah, in a way, he almost seems to have more dignity than most of the people in the Obama administration about the war, and that guy has a track record that would make your hair curl.
Yeah, absolutely. And when he came in and replaced Rumsfeld, it gave an opportunity for the cooler heads in the Pentagon to prevail and to prevent Cheney from attacking Iran while he was still in power. The last 2 years of the George W. Bush administration, we were working very, very hard to prevent a war with Iran. And now, guess what? Obama's administration is pouring out the same kind of propaganda and the drumbeat toward a war with Iran. And, you know, this is not just stupid, it's suicidal. I really believe it would be the end of the United States as we know it.
Well, it's just fraught with collateral damage, and I think that's why it hasn't happened in a way. But then again, I've got good activists like yourself who are pushing hard for that. Bob, stay with me. One more segment. We got one more. I do want to talk about the ad I just played, buildingwhat.org, patriots.us, and I want to recommend you as the Secretary of Defense under the President Paul administration, or whatever we might be able to get in 2012. Stay with us, folks. Deadline Live. Be right back.
This is John Joseph, Cro-Mag's Blood Clot. You're listening to Jack Blood, the one and only, and it's the soundtrack for the revolution. Check in, stay involved, get up, get involved, like Mr. James Brown said. Peace.
Well, a lot of you are going to be happy that John Joseph, the rock star, will be on the show next week joining us. He is also a 9/11 truther, Cro-Mags' band. We'll look forward to that. On the show tomorrow, J. Michael Springman. He worked at the consulate in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, and watched as people who were on the terrorist watch list were given visas to come to the United States and, I don't know, vacation? Bob Bowman is with us. The Patriots.us. We're talking about that. Well, you know Mike Springman, don't you, Bob? I'm sure you met him at events. I mean, it's just some of the most amazing information. We've gotten other information like that as well, that our so-called Department of Homeland Security or Immigration, they work to actively bring in known terrorists into this country, and then they want us all to adhere to whatever we're doing, and we're the terrorists. I have a problem with that, sir.
Well, of course. Now, in my speech as President of the United States, which I give around the country right now, it's an inaugural address, there's a couple of things I do. One is to abolish the CIA, and another is to abolish the Department of Homeland Security. We do not need an agency whose mission is to protect the government from the American people.
Bob, as much as I want you to be president and I would vote for you, I almost feel like I would be signing your death warrant if I did that.
Oh, I understand that and I'm prepared to face that. All I need is half an hour as President of the United States, and I'll change a lot of things, and a lot of them irreversibly. It can be done. But that's not really in the cards.
Well, no. I need to ask you the question. Let me play Jay Leno for a minute, or these guys that always do this. 2012 is coming up. You're in your 70s. You do have cancer, but you're going strong, yes, Bob, and you're touring around the country. Your family is amazingly supportive of you, and they're just great people as well. Are you considering a run in 2012? We've just talked to Cindy Sheehan. She's planning a run. Well, she didn't say that outright, but she did hint that she's planning a run in 2012. We've got a real nice cast going. Can we add you into that picture?
Well, here's the thing. I don't think I want to run for president again. I would like to see a fusion ticket between Ron Paul and Dennis Kucinich. And what we're doing around the country, rather than me running myself for something, is we're recruiting young people to run for office, especially Congress. And what I'm telling people around the country is that before you support anybody for Congress, you must demand a few promises from them. They must swear that, one, they will never take corporate money either before or after they're elected. Number two, they must swear that they will support a constitutional amendment taking away corporate personhood. And number 3, they must swear that they will support a new and independent investigation of 9/11.
Yeah. Wow. Well, and we've seen this. I know you've written about this on your website. I want to go to that, but if I don't go to this now, I'm afraid we'll run out of time, and this is one of the reasons I had you on. The Building What campaign, buildingwhat.org. Yeah. What it does is, I mean, we were going for referendums. We were going for grand juries. We've tried everything for 9 years, but this is a beautiful campaign. I love this. It has the victims' families that don't buy into the official story, and then it talks about Building 7, and people can help fund this ad on cable television, first in New York and then maybe all over the world. If you can talk about that for a second and why you think that could be successful.
Well, sure. I mean, the key to getting a new investigation is to get so many of the American people aware of this and demanding it that we can't be ignored anymore. And so this ad is a step in that direction. People should go to buildingwhat.org and contribute to the fund to help play this TV ad and reach millions of people. And then if they want to help get lots of young people to Congress who will do the right thing, have them go to thepatriots.us, our website, and contribute to our organization. And what we're going to do when we get a handful of people elected to Congress is to form a Patriot caucus, which extends across Republican Democrat divide and all across the political spectrum. And we have asked Dennis Kucinich and Ron Paul to co-chair the Patriot caucus.
What has been the response? Because I think we lost Dennis. I track this, and this is my job. You know, I get paid to look at all this, and I'm very disappointed with Dennis here over the last, 6 to 8 months. But what has been the response? You've suggested this. Have you heard back from either candidate or potential candidate, and are they interested in signing the pledge that you have just proposed?
Well, I don't know. I intend to go see them personally and talk about that. Now, I know Dennis is, he's been targeted as all the good guys have been, and he is sort of afraid to come out publicly for 9/11 Truth because everybody who has Cynthia McKinney and, Max Cleland, everybody, they get kicked out one way or another.
Well, Sarah Palin, but we got Sarah Palin on the record. She wants a new investigation into 9/11. I'm not endorsing her by any means, but if that's the standard, if that's what the bar that's been set, then they can all do it. And Ron Paul has told me on this show that he wants a new investigation into 9/11. I know Dennis is not afraid to say, well, let's have a new investigation. He may not go as far as you and I will. But I was really disappointed that he bowed down in that healthcare thing because we didn't. I mean, he came out, I think it was 3 or 4 months ahead of that, saying this was AIG for the insurance companies, and that same bill that wasn't really altered in any way, he ended up voting for, and he got something in return. And I know it's hard. I can't imagine being in that position, but I was a little disappointed in him doing that. Not to mention his politics are way far away from mine.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care about that. Look, as you say, we can get together on a couple of things. Now, look, on the Patriots.us, you're going to find this, and you are such an eloquent writer and speaker, Bob. I really hope people go to your website and at least look at some of the speeches you've done and read some of the things and post those on their website because you have a real gift for this. Left and right together. You write this, yet here in this country, we've got Christians divided by Muslims. We've got black divided by white. They have really done an amazing job trying to divide us. Whether it's working or not, I'll leave that up to the viewer. We've got George Soros now attacking the Tea Parties with the NAACP, looking for racism in the Tea Parties. We've got people threatening to burn Korans here on 9/11. I don't even recognize this country, to be quite honest with you. And here I've been covering it for the last 15 years every day.
Yeah. I agree with you completely. The billionaires, the banksters, they have been artificially dividing the American people for years and years and years. We've got to break free of it. We've got to come together, quit fighting each other, and resist them and take our country back.
You think we'll be able to do it? Because I'm looking at a lot of very disillusioned people, and they end up falling into what we call the steam valve. They fall into some radical, leftist code pink thing, or which isn't all bad, or they fall into radical.
I think they're great. They're great. And
well, and I
believe it or not, some of my speeches have been co-sponsored by the militia and code pink.
that shows that there's hope. But I'm using them as an example, and maybe I could find a better one, say, I don't know, MoveOn.org or Daily Kos, and then you've got Glenn Beck and people like Glenn Beck, who are again fermenting this religious war, this kind of modern day crusade, and they're steam valves. So what we want to do is, and I want to ask you about this, can we catch these people not falling into these distractions so that they can stay focused on where we're at right now? Because I think a lot of people are with you and me, Bob, and maybe they don't even know it.
Yeah, and we find that people on the far left and the far right agree on 95% of the issues. So we've got to get together and work together and put aside our differences on all the little hot-button issues that they use to divide us, whether it's abortion or gun control or prayer in school or any of that junk. The thing that those issues have in common is that the billionaires don't care about them. They don't care how it turns out. So we've got to forget about the artificial ways that they divide us and come together to take the country back, to cut the ties between big money and political power, and get a military and foreign policy which is constitutional again, which uses our military to protect our borders and our people, period, not the global financial interests of multinational corporations.
You think so? We've got this Tea Party. Yeah, we got this Tea Party phenomenon that's kind of spinning out of control almost. I'm predicting this, and you tell me if you agree with this, that we have a whole new wash of people come in November, and they keep doing the same things that they did before, and people finally aren't going to believe anyone's campaign speech ever again. Is that where we're going, Bob?
Well, that seems to be where we're going, and until we get patriots running for Congress that have made the pledge, and we start electing them, and they start doing what they say, like Alan Grayson in Florida, and Ron Paul and Dennis, a handful of people. Until we get that, we are going to have the same old thing happen over and over again. But we're working on it, and eventually we will win.
You just inspired me to have you back tomorrow, though, Bob. I know you can't do it. Where are you right now? Where can people go see you?
I'm in Vista, California, in northern San Diego County.
And where are you going to be speaking? People need to go to Patriots, thepatriots.us. Link that up. You can look at Bob's speech, his Take Back America speech, which includes corporations, the 9/11 wars, the 9/11 omission report, and the smoking gun of World Trade Center 7. Thank you, Bob, for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow, folks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Blood pressure.